The sun was just coming up over the quiet lake when Ethan stepped out of his small wooden cabin. The air was cool, and the sound of birds echoed through the trees. He loved this peaceful place. For years, he had dreamed of living by the water, away from the noise of town. The cabin wasn't big or fancy, but it was his pride and joy. He had built it with his own hands after buying the land years ago. Every plank, every nail told a story of hard work and peace. Ethan was not a man who liked attention. He enjoyed quiet mornings, fishing, and watching the sunrise. But his peace was about to be disturbed in the most unexpected way. Down the road, a car stopped suddenly. A woman got out holding a clipboard and wearing a serious face. She was dressed neatly, with a shiny badge that read, HOA, a president. Her name was Corinne. Everyone in the nearby community knew her as the kind of person who liked to control everything around her. Karen walked toward Ethan's cabin like she owned the place. She didn't smile. Instead, she looked around with disapproval. "Excuse me," she said loudly. "You can't stay here. This cabin violates the HOA rules." Ethan looked up from his chair and gave a polite nod. "Good morning, ma'am. This property doesn't belong to your HOA. I've owned this land for 15 years. Karen frowned. "That's impossible," she said. "All of this falls under our new development zone. You can't just live here like that." Ethan stayed calm and replied softly, "The county maps say otherwise. My land isn't part of your community." He could tell she didn't want to listen. She started taking pictures with her phone. His truck, his dock, even his fishing gear. "I'll report this," she said sharply. "You're trespassing on HOA property." Ethan sighed but didn't argue. He had dealt with people like her before. People who thought power came from papers and titles, not truth. "Go ahead," he said calmly. "You'll find I'm right." Karen stormed off to her car. Minutes later, the distant sound of sirens broke the morning peace. Ethan shook his head slightly and poured himself another cup of coffee. 2 police cars arrived on the dirt road, lights flashing. The officers stepped out, looking around. Karen rushed toward them, waving her hands. "There he is," she shouted, pointing at Ethan. "He's refusing to leave private property. He's dangerous and breaking our HOA rules." Ethan stayed seated on his porch, calm as ever. The officers approached carefully, one of them greeting him politely. "Sir, may we have your name, please?" Ethan reached into his pocket and handed over his ID. The officer looked at it, then blinked in surprise. His partner leaned over to see, and both of them suddenly stood straighter. Their tone changed at once. "Good morning, Sheriff," one said quickly. Karen froze. "Sheriff?" she repeated, her voice uncertain. "What do you mean, Sheriff?" Ethan gave a small smile. "That's right, ma'am. I'm Sheriff Ethan Miles. I've lived here for years, and this land is part of my county jurisdiction." Karen blinked in disbelief. She looked from him to the officers and back again. "You've got to be joking," she said. "You can't just live here like that." One officer gently spoke up. "Ma'am, this isn't HOA property. It's outside your community boundary. The sheriff's land is privately owned and legally registered." Karen's face turned red. "That can't be true. I checked our neighborhood map." Ethan stood up slowly, brushed the dust from his jeans, and walked toward the edge of the porch. "Your map ends at the main road, ma'am. The rest of this land, including this cabin, is mine. It has been for a long time." Karen tried to argue, but her words started to tremble. The calmness in Ethan's voice made her uneasy. She had come here expecting to scare a stranger, but instead she was facing the man who upheld the law in the entire county. The officers stayed quiet, watching the scene unfold. Still refusing to believe she was wrong, Karen crossed her arms and said, "I'm calling your supervisor." Ethan chuckled softly. "Go ahead." but I think you'll find my office number goes straight to me." One officer tried to hold back a smile. Karen glared at them all. "This isn't over," she said, but her voice had lost its power. The officers spoke gently to her, explaining again that she had no authority here. "Ma'am," one said, "you called 911 for something that isn't a crime. Please understand that this line is for emergencies only." Karen stuttered, realizing what she had done. I thought he was trespassing," she said quietly. Ethan looked at her kindly but firmly. "Next time, ask before assuming, ma'am. You could have saved yourself a lot of trouble." He turned back toward his porch, sat down again, and picked up his coffee cup. The officers nodded to him and began walking back to their patrol cars. Karen stood there for a few moments, looking small and confused. The woman who came ready to order people around now looked unsure of herself. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Finally, she turned around and walked back to her car, mumbling something under her breath. Ethan watched her drive away down the dirt road, leaving a cloud of dust behind her. The lake was quiet again. The sound of the water lapping against the dock returned, and the birds began to sing once more. He leaned back in his chair, shaking his head slightly, amused at how quickly peace could turn to chaos and then back again. Later that afternoon, Ethan drove into town to pick up some supplies. People greeted him warmly, as always. He was a respected man, known for his fairness and calm nature. When someone asked if everything was all right out at the lake, Ethan simply smiled and said, "Just a misunderstanding. Nothing serious." Word spread quickly, though. By evening, people were already talking about how the new HOA lady had called the cops on the sheriff himself. Some laughed, others shook their heads. Ethan didn't care much for gossip, but he couldn't help but smile when he heard the story making its way through town. Back at the cabin that night, the moonlight shone across the lake. Ethan sat on the dock with his fishing rod, thinking about how strange people could be. Some folks wanted power so badly that they forgot to be kind. He hoped Karen would learn from the experience. As he looked at his reflection in the calm water, he felt grateful for what he had: peace, honesty, and a home he built with his own hands. He didn't need approval from anyone to know he belonged there. The land was his, fair and square. The gentle wind blew through the trees, carrying the sound of crickets and the scent of pine. Ethan took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and smiled. The drama of the day was over, and tomorrow would bring another quiet morning by the lake. He didn't know that this was just the beginning. Karen wasn't done yet, and what would happen next would surprise the whole community. But for now, under the stars, the sheriff rested peacefully, unaware of the storm that was still waiting beyond the calm waters. The next morning, Ethan woke up early as usual. The sun had just begun to rise, painting golden colors across the lake. He made himself a cup of coffee and sat on the porch, enjoying the quiet view. It was calm again, but he knew peace wouldn't last long. The day before had caused quite a bit of attention. By now, almost everyone in town knew that the new HOA president had called. 911 on the county sheriff himself. Ethan wasn't angry about it, but he was curious to see what would happen next. People often learn more from their mistakes than from lectures, and Karen, he thought, was about to learn a big lesson in humility. Around mid-morning, a white SUV slowly pulled into his driveway. It was Karen. Her face looked different this time, nervous, embarrassed, and unsure of what to say. She stepped out and stood by her car for a moment, clutching her clipboard like it was a shield. Ethan stood from his chair, staying calm as always. "Morning, ma'am," he said kindly. Karen took a deep breath. "Sheriff, I just wanted to apologize. I didn't know. I didn't realize who you were. I thought you were trespassing." Ethan nodded politely. "I understand, ma'am. But next time, You might want to check your facts before calling 911. You could have caused a lot of unnecessary trouble." Karen's shoulders sank. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I guess I got carried away. I just wanted to keep the neighborhood safe." Ethan didn't want to embarrass her further, so he just nodded again and said, "It's all right. Mistakes happen. Just don't let it happen again." She looked relieved, but still uneasy. "So, there are no hard feelings?" she asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "None from me, but you might want to check with the county office. There's something they'll probably want to discuss with you." Karen frowned in confusion. "The county office? Why?" Ethan didn't answer directly. "You'll find out soon enough. Have a good day, ma'am." He tipped his hat slightly and went back inside his cabin. That afternoon, Karen found out what he meant. A letter arrived from the county environmental department. It stated that her subdivision's recent expansion near the lake might have violated county boundaries and environmental laws. All construction projects around the waterline were to be paused for review. It also mentioned that property owners had built too close to public land, the very area Ethan had been living in long before the neighborhood even existed. When she read the letter, her face turned pale. She realized that her HOA had overstepped their limits badly. The lake didn't belong to the HOA. It was under county protection, and the sheriff himself had been the one overseeing it for years. The news spread quickly across the neighborhood. Homeowners were shocked. Some were angry at Karen for not checking facts before starting the argument. Others laughed about how the rule queen had messed with the wrong person. Karen avoided everyone for a few days, too embarrassed to face them. Meanwhile, Ethan went about his life as usual. He continued his patrols, helped locals with small disputes, and sometimes spent evenings fishing with families by the lake. He didn't hold any grudge. He even told his deputies not to speak badly about Karen. Let people learn through peace, not pride, he said calmly. A week later, the county board held a small meeting to review the issue. Ethan was invited, as was Karen. She sat quietly at the end of the table, nervous and red-faced. The county officer explained that the HOA's boundaries were misdrawn years ago and would be corrected. The lake and surrounding forest were confirmed as county property, not HOA land. Ethan stayed quiet until the end, then spoke gently. "No one needs to lose face here. Mistakes happen when people rush to control what they don't understand. Let's focus on cooperation, not punishment." The board agreed, and the meeting ended peacefully. Karen thanked him afterward, her voice soft and shaky. "You didn't have to be kind about it," she said. "After how I treated you, I wouldn't have blamed you if you'd wanted to embarrass me." Ethan smiled. "That's not how I was raised, ma'am. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after them." That night, when Ethan returned to his cabin, the stars shone brightly over the lake. He felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. Not because he'd proven anything, but because the truth had come out without anger or revenge. The following weekend, Ethan organized a small community picnic by the lake. It was something he did every year to bring locals together, families, fishermen, and even newcomers from the nearby subdivisions. When he sent the invitations, he made sure one was placed in Karen's mailbox. On the day of the picnic, people gathered under the tall pine trees, laughing and enjoying homemade food. Kids ran around near the water, and music played softly from a radio. To everyone's surprise, Karen showed up too. She carried a basket of cookies and looked nervous but determined. When she approached Ethan, people watched quietly. "Sheriff Miles," she said, "thank you for inviting me. I didn't think you'd want me here." He smiled. "Everyone's welcome here, ma'am. It's a good day to start fresh." Karen nodded gratefully and handed him the basket. "These are homemade," she said. "A small peace offering." Ethan chuckled and accepted them. "Appreciate it." As the day went on, Karen relaxed and started talking to people. For the first time, she wasn't giving orders or carrying her clipboard. She was just another neighbor, sharing stories and laughter. The air was light and full of warmth. When the sun began to set, golden light spread across the lake. Ethan stood by the water, looking at the reflection of the trees. Karen walked up beside him. "You really love this place, don't you?" she asked quietly. Ethan nodded. "It's home. Always has been. Peace like this doesn't come easy, so I protect it." She looked down at the water. "I understand that now. I was too focused on rules. I forgot that sometimes people just want peace." Ethan smiled. "Rules have their place, but respect and understanding come first." Karen nodded slowly. "Thank you for teaching me that." The crowd began to leave as twilight set in. Children waved goodbye, and families packed up their picnic baskets. Ethan stayed by the lake, watching the stars appear one by one. He could hear the gentle laughter fading in the distance. Later that night, as he walked back to his cabin, he looked across the lake toward the neighborhood lights on the hill. For the first time, those lights didn't feel like intrusions. They felt like signs of a community finally at peace. Karen, now back home, sat on her porch and looked across the same lake. She thought about how one call to 911 had changed everything, not just for her reputation, but for her understanding of respect. She promised herself to lead with kindness instead of control. From that day on, the HOA became calmer and fairer. Rules were rewritten with compassion, and Ethan was invited to advise the community when needed. The story of the HOA president who called 911 on the sheriff became a gentle local legend, one people laughed about at barbecues. Not with cruelty, but with amusement and a hint of admiration. As the months passed, Ethan's life returned to its quiet rhythm. Each morning, he still sat on his porch, sipping coffee, listening to birds, and watching the light dance on the lake. But sometimes, he'd see Karen walking her dog on the trail, and they'd wave to each other with friendly smiles. Peace had returned, but it was stronger now, built on lessons, respect, and understanding. Ethan had shown everyone that real authority didn't come from power or rules. It came from patience, kindness, and doing what's right even when no one is watching. And as the lake shimmered under the morning sun, Ethan knew that sometimes the best victories were the quiet ones, the ones where no one lost, but everyone learned something valuable.